You are listening to Blessed and Bossed Up, presented by Anchored Media, an entrepreneurship podcast for Christians all about how to make God the CEO of your business. Get ready to be inspired, challenged, but well equipped to live and build your destiny His way. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Blessed and Bossed Up podcast. So over the last week, I have been feeling terrible. I've had a cold. I thought that I was on the mend and I was getting ready to record an episode on Sunday. And then I started coughing up a storm. And now I could barely talk for so long without coughing. So I'm going to rest versus trying to push myself and pausing every minute or two to cough. I'm going to rest this week. I'm going to put out one or two replay episodes because we didn't have an episode last week. One of my favorite things about the show being out for almost 10 years is the fact that we have so many episodes to pull from. And I usually intentionally try to pull from episodes from years ago so that it feels new even if you heard it before. Because one thing we know is that God's word is never stale. Is never old. And I believe that when we do these repost episodes, He always has a way of bringing the exact message back when it needs to be repeated. And there's one that has been top of mind all day for me. So I need to go locate it. I don't even remember what year this one came out, but I do remember it was like a January episode that I really love doing. So I'm going to repost that one now, and then we'll pull another one for later in the week. And prayerfully by next week, my cough will be gone and I will be ready to record the new episodes I have for you. There are two that are like, I can't wait to really dive in and finish my notes on them so that we can record them. So thank you guys so much for your patience. I love y'all, and please enjoy this repeat episode. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Blessed and Bossed Up podcast. And this is another installment of our Bible on Business series. The title of today's episode is that Kingdom Entrepreneurs are Disruptors. Over the last few weeks, we've had some really pivotal episodes, and shout out to everybody who has messaged me, whether it's on social media. I'm in a off social media phase right now, but every now and then I log on just to check my messages to make sure I'm not missing anything. And as I've done that, I've seen some of your posts or emails and messages. So I really just thank you for your support of this show. If the show has blessed you, please leave us a 5-star review, because that just helps people know what we got going on over here. It's a lot of Christian content out here. And I believe that what God is doing in Blessed and Bossed Up, it's been different since we started almost 8 years ago. Whew, we're going to talk about that when the anniversary comes up. But it's been different since starting this show. But I believe this Bible on Business series has really been something special. And even us introducing our new book club pick, Leadership as an Identity, I'm just excited about what God is doing on this platform. And I want to get this message out to as many people as possible. So share the podcast, share the episodes that resonate with you the most, with your communities, your family, your friends. Thank you so much. I love you guys. I appreciate it. All right. So in today's episode, we are going to be in the book of Acts. And I found this particular text. We're going to be specifically in Acts 19:23 through 32. To give a little context, this story describes a moment in the city of Ephesus when the Apostle Paul's ministry sparks a really big reaction amongst local business owners. It reveals how his ministry impacted things economically and spiritually. And it shows or introduces the tension between the early Christians and these pagan religious practices, specifically surrounding idol making, because that's what their business was all about. Now, I believe this text is relevant to us as entrepreneurs because it shows that we are going to be disruptors. A lot of things that we're going to discuss about what was happening in the city of Ephesus and their idolatry and all that they were into, to me, is very similar to different idolatry and even occultic practices that we see in the business world. And if we're going to have these pure kingdom businesses, what's going to come from it or come with it is going to be a lot of disruption.
people are going to have strong reactions to that disruption. And I believe that this is a great way to prepare us for the inevitable, because this is speaking about a riot in particular, but whatever a riot may mean for our journey may be different. But I still believe that there are some practical and important implications in this text that we need to keep in mind as we are building our businesses. And also, there's hope in this text, because as we're going to see, the Lord kept Paul even in the midst of this riot breaking loose. Now, before we read the specific passage, I think it's important for us to just give a bit more context about Paul's impact in ministry in Ephesus as a whole, so that we can truly understand the context and the times that we find ourselves in once we get to chapter 19, verse 23. So to give you some background, Paul's ministry in Ephesus, as described in Acts 18 through 20, it represents one of the most significant and influential missions, both in terms of the time that he spent there, which was about 3 years, and the profound impact that it had on the local community and the wider region of Asia Minor. Ephesus, which is a major city in the Roman Empire, was not only an economic hub, but it was a center of pagan worship, most notably of the goddess of Artemis. The culture was saturated with idol worship, magical practices, and occultism, and it created this environment that both resisted and at the same time attracted Paul's message, especially because at the time Paul was performing a lot of miracles. There was one part, I can't remember where exactly it was. I want to say earlier on in chapter 19, but it was funny because there were some Jewish people who were going around trying to cast out demons and do the same thing that they were seeing Paul do. And the demon responded back to the Jewish person and was like, I know Jesus, I know Paul, but who are you? I found that to be so funny. But I believe that even though this area, they resisted his message, of course, because he was talking about the Lord, it also attracted them because they were attracted to miracles. Similar to how when I think we did the episode on losing 83% or something like that, but I was talking about how Jesus had finished doing all of these miracles and he drew in all of these disciples because they liked to see these miracles. They wanted to see more. They were attracted to what he was doing. But then once he starts talking about the depth of his message beyond the miracle signs and wonders, they weren't trying to hear it because they couldn't understand it. And so I believe it's these same tendencies that we see in the city of Ephesus that were drawn in, but also resisted. Nevertheless, Paul's ministry was extremely impactful. During his time in Ephesus, Paul initially preached in the synagogue, as he often did whenever he entered a new city. However, after facing some opposition with some of the Jewish leaders, he shifted his teaching base to a lecture hall. This space allowed Paul to teach daily. He was reaching both Jews and Greeks, and his teachings became widely known. And scripture notes that all residents of Asia heard the word of the Lord. And we see that in Acts 19 and 10. And this indicates that his message reached far beyond the city limits that he was in. And this extended period of teaching, again, about 3 years, allowed him to disciple and equip believers, strengthening their faith and enabling them to share the gospel with others in the region. One of the most notable impacts of Paul's ministry was the transformation that he had amongst those who were involved in magic and occultic practices. After they witnessed God's power through Paul, many of them confessed their practices and they publicly burned their expensive scrolls and books of magic in an act of repentance. So this truly symbolized their dedication to Christ. Acts 19:19 says, a number of them who had been practicing sorcery brought their incantation books and burned them at a public bonfire. The value of these books was several $million. I mean, talk about fruit. Paul was getting the job done. Okay, you hear me? And his ministry even directly impacted the local economy, particularly those that were profiting from idol worship. And that's what we're going to get to when we read the text for this episode. Paul's ministry laid the foundation for a strong, vibrant church in this city. His work led to the formation of a Christian community that continued to thrive even after he left. Later, Paul's letter to the Ephesians and the account of the Ephesian church in the book of Revelation illustrate that the believers in Ephesus grew into a significant Christian community that influenced that region for years and years to come. So as we could see, Paul's ministry, it shook up their society. It challenged their cultural norms by challenging their religious practices and societal values. He showed them that the gospel isn't limited by or conformed to whatever culture that they have going on. He showed how Christianity can disrupt economic systems that are rooted in sinful practices. That tension financially that was created by his teaching, it shows how the gospel can impact even the foundational economic systems of a community because it challenges greed, exploitation, and idolatry. And we're going to get to that in our main message of this episode. But he also showed them that spiritual warfare is real. He demonstrated through his work that true faith in Christ equips you to confront and overcome spiritual forces in a way that their worldly practices like magic simply can't. When I read all of this and go through the work and the impact of Paul's ministry in Ephesus, the one word that comes to mind is legacy. We should all aspire for our businesses to have this type of impact, to where we're challenging cultural norms, where we're winning souls for the kingdom of God, to where we're confronting idolatry and sin and bringing people to a place of repentance, to where when we leave, it's not about Paul is so great, but it's Christ is so great. People aren't chanting his name, they're chanting Jesus. And as I read this and I meditated on it, I wanted it to be the subject of today's episode because I see this as wisdom. Man, God, this book, y'all, is so rich. I can't say it enough. The Bible is so rich. Wisdom is not just in Proverbs and in Ecclesiastes. Wisdom is all through the text. And Paul left us some really, really good wisdom here as we are going to disrupt in our own ways. We're not going to be building these businesses in this world that is full of idolatry, just like Ephesus, that's full of occult practices, just like Ephesus. We're not going to disrupt these systems and think that they're not going to react strongly. It's a part of this life, but we have this wisdom here so that we can take these things into consideration as we are continuing to build and plan for our businesses. So let's go to Acts 19. I'm going to read from verse 23 through 32, and this is the New Living Translation. It says, about that time, serious trouble developed in Ephesus concerning the way, and the way is referring to the Christian life. It began with Demetrius, a silversmith who had a large business manufacturing silver shrines of the Greek goddess Artemis. He kept many craftsmen busy. He called them together along with others employed in similar trades and addressed them as follows. Gentlemen, you know that our wealth comes from this business. But as you have seen and heard, this man Paul has persuaded many people that handmade gods aren't really gods at all. And he's done this not only here in Ephesus, but throughout the entire province. Of course, I'm not talking about the loss of public respect for our business. I'm also concerned that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will lose its influence and that Artemis, the magnificent goddess worshipped throughout the province of Asia and all around the world, will be robbed of her great prestige. At this, their anger boiled, and they began shouting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." Soon the whole city was filled with confusion, everyone rushing to the amphitheater, dragging along Gaius and Aristarchus, who were Paul's traveling companions from Macedonia. Paul wanted to go in too, but the believers wouldn't let him. Some of the officials of the province, friends of Paul, also sent a message to him, begging him not to risk his life by entering the amphitheater. Inside, the people were all shouting, some one thing, some another. Everyone was in confusion. In fact, most of them didn't even know why they were there. I'm going to keep reading all the way to the end so I don't just stop in the middle of the story. The Jews in the crowd pushed Alexander forward and told him to explain the situation. He motioned for silence and tried to speak. But when the crowd realized he was a Jew, they started shouting again and kept it up for about 2 hours. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. At last, the mayor was able to quiet them down enough to speak. Citizens of Ephesus, he says, everyone knows that Ephesus is the official guardian of the temple of the great Artemis, whose image fell down to us from heaven. Since this is an undeniable fact, you should stay calm and not do anything rash. You have brought these men here, but they have stolen nothing from the temple and have not spoken against our goddess. If Demetrius and the craftsmen have a case against them, the courts are in session and the officials can hear the case at once. Let them make formal charges. And if there are complaints about other matters, they can be settled in a legal assembly. I am afraid that we are in danger of being charged with rioting by the Roman government, since there is no cause for all this commotion. And if Rome demands an explanation, we won't know what to say. Then he dismissed them and they dispersed. So let's recap for a second. The riot began because Demetrius, a silversmith whose job was to create shrines to the goddess Artemis, he stirred everybody up because he was saying that Paul's teachings threatened their bottom line. It threatened their livelihood and the worship of Artemis and caused this big uproar, even dragging in the people that Paul was with into the theater with them. Paul had all intentions on going in there to confront the crowd, but the other believers were like, no. And he had some friends in high places favor. The officials, they told him not to go because they were rightfully afraid of his safety. This episode is brought to you by NetSuite. They say that every day your business is late to AI, you fall 2 days behind. But how do you keep up? The competition is only moving faster. Fortunately, that's NetSuite next. You probably know NetSuite, the AI-powered business management suite that securely connects all of your data. It's a unified suite that brings your financials, inventory, commerce, HR, and CRM into a single source of truth, trusted by over 43,000 customers. NetSuite Next is the next huge leap in how business gets done because AI is built into everything that you do. It automatically surfaces custom insights throughout your day. AI agents work alongside you to solve problems and handle routine work. And anytime you have a question about anything, ask, just like you're having a conversation with a colleague. NetSuite is customized for a wide range of industries, so it supports the way your business truly works. Whether your company earns millions or even hundreds of millions, it's time for NetSuite Next, where your business meets AI. If I needed this product, this is exactly what I would use. For the first time ever, you can try NetSuite Next for free. If your revenues are at least in the 7 figures, go to netsuite.ai/blessed. Built for every industry, ready for every boardroom. netsuite.ai/blessed. This episode is brought to you by IXL. Summer break should be fun, yes, but it's also important to keep young minds active. IXL helps kids stay engaged and avoid losing progress between school years. IXL is an award-winning online learning platform that helps kids truly understand what they're learning, whether they're building math confidence, strengthening reading and writing skills, or reviewing science concepts. From pre-K through 12th grade, IXL offers personalized, interactive learning that adapts to each child's level and pace. It's an easy way to keep learning going through the summer and help kids feel confident heading into the next school year. Y'all know, y'all been listening to this for a while. I am an IXL girl. I am an IXL mom, and it is a requirement in my house. My child right now needs to stay sharp. We don't play that backsliding during the summer. No, he has to stay sharp, reviewing those key skills and building confidence in those challenging subjects. Studies show that kids who use IXL score higher on tests, and that's proven in all 50 states. IXL adapts to each child's level, pace, and learning needs. You save time and money. One subscription covers everything, pre-K through 12th grade for all the kids in your home. And 1 hour of tutoring can cost more than an entire month of IXL. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And Blessed and Bossed Up listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/today. Visit IXL.com/today to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. This episode is brought to you by Super.com. You know that feeling when your credit score quietly gets in the way? A declined card, a loan that costs way more than it should. It's frustrating. And for a lot of people, the problem isn't that they're bad with money, it's that the system just isn't giving them credit for what they're already doing. That's why I want to talk about Super.com's credit building program. With Super Plus membership, you get access to the Super.com card. And here's the part that I love. It gives you a $5,000 credit usage boost. This isn't money that you spend. It's reported to the bureaus as available credit that you're not using, which can lower your utilization ratio and move your score in the right direction. You can also report your on-time rent payments, including up to 2 years of past rent, to all 3 major credit bureaus, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. The biggest bill that you pay every month can finally start working for you. No hard credit checks to apply, 0% APR, and you can track your progress right inside the app. Start building your credit the easy way. Go to super.com/credit right now to see how Super Plus can help you boost your credit score. That's super.com/credit. Credit building features are only available to the Super Plus members. Impact on your credit score may vary. Super.com cannot control factors outside of their services that may impact your credit. Visit super.com for more details. So back in this theater, confusion escalates. Everybody's chaotic. Everybody's shouting different things. Don't nobody know what they hollering for. It was just straight chaos and folks not even knowing what the real problem is. The city clerk then steps in, calms everybody down, letting them know that Paul and his people ain't robbed no temples. They ain't say nothing about the goddess. All Paul did was spread the gospel. And when them folks saw the truth of the freedom in Christ and truth that he's the only way, the way as they named it in the beginning, people left. They burned all of their witchcraft books and all of that, as we saw in the text. They left on their own. Paul and his people weren't out there talking bad about Artemis. They were just sharing the good news. I mean, that's a word and some wisdom on evangelism all by itself, but that ain't what this episode is about. But the city clerk, he basically tell them like, look, if you got some smoke with Paul and his companions, take it through the courts. They open, there are procedures available that you can take this through. But if not, y'all about to be charged with rioting because you don't have no reason to be here acting like this. The crowd finally got some sense and understood what the city clerk was saying, and they rolled out. The riot ended. It didn't end in any violence. No punishment for Paul. No punishment for the people that he was with, thanks to the mayor stepping in and talk some sense into everybody. And Paul didn't have any immediate conflict in the city of Ephesus after that. Now, there's some key things I want to emphasize in this text. The first being that when you hit on people's idols, they will have a visceral reaction. Paul hit on the same idol, one of, that is very prevalent in the business world today, and that is the love of money. Demetrius made this argument, or he was hyping people up, trying to make it seem as if Paul was blaspheming Artemis, but he wasn't. What he was really mad about was that he was going to be making less money. This was impacting their bottom line because Paul was converting people over to Christianity. So the less people you have worshiping Artemis, the less of them little figurines that y'all finna sell. So this was impacting his money, but he was getting people hyped up, trying to make it seem like Paul was saying this, that, and the other about their false God, but that wasn't true. But because he impacted them economically, this caused Demetrius to react in such a way where he built up this huge, chaotic riot based off of lies and misinformation and confusion. Because ain't nobody even know what they was mad about. But he successfully manipulated everybody to be upset. Now, I don't know what rioting will look like in our individual journeys, but this text, as I said before, tells me that we need to expect that there is going to be some type of opposition. Because our message and our way of doing things as kingdom business, it directly conflicts with that of the world. A couple idols that come to mind are hustle culture and being a workaholic. We talked a lot about that in the previous episodes, how there are so many online business models and just entrepreneurship in general that promotes this hustle, this grind, this no days off that leads to burnout, depression, anxiety. Y'all remember all them statistics we read in a previous episode? As Christian entrepreneurs, the gospel emphasizes that we need rest. We need balance. We need to trust God rather than relying on our human effort. We have a different approach that honors the Sabbath, that honors rest, that demonstrates that success doesn't require sacrificing our well being or our families. This is disruptive to the norm. I mean, you could even see people's reactions to this if you're somebody who works a job, where if you say, hey, I'm going to have to leave the office early because my child has a basketball game or whatever, how that might impact you negatively in the workplace. There are so many women who are freezing their eggs and doing different things because they have to put off starting a family based upon career advancement, because they can't take a break in their late 20s and early 30s to focus on building their family, because they have to work to set themselves up for a financial future and job security and promotion and your career goals. The way that the corporate system is set up is as if you can't have both. And so many women are resorting to other alternatives in order to accommodate this way of life. And I don't think that that's right. Now, it's one thing if you just don't want to have children at that time, and so you freeze your eggs and do what's necessary so that you can healthily do that later. But if you're doing it solely because you need to in order to advance professionally, our system should not be set up that way. And if you go against that system, because it is not God's will for us to sacrifice family life for work. So if you choose to go about work, career, business the Lord's way, it's going to be offensive and cause a reaction from those who benefit on the system being that way. So it may cost you a promotion. It may cost you career advancement. It may cost you a raise. And for us as entrepreneurs, it's going to cost you time. As I have grown my business, I've been an entrepreneur since 2015, full-time since 2017. The way that I worked in those earlier days, there's no way that I could work that way now, being married with a family with small children in particular. I was telling my husband the other day, I was watching this YouTube video, and the woman was talking about how, like, she said that she was doing ministry or something. She was at something, her husband's a minister, and she was at something that he was having, and somebody had came up to her and prophesied to her about how she was going to have this impactful women's ministry and she was going to do all of these things. And she said, I looked at that lady and said, that sounds wonderful, but it's not going to happen until my kids are older. And that really struck a chord with me, because I feel like something that I have learned as I've grown my family, as I'm in this phase of growing my family and in this phase of having businesses, I realized that I cannot focus on both at the same time. I can't. I can't be in this phase of rapidly growing my business and trying to do this and trying to do that while also tending to my family and my young children and their needs. It is not going to happen at the same time. And I've had to face that truth. I feel like when I had my first son, it was a bit more feasible because I was able to create a system for my business, a system for my home, and that harmony was there. As I added another child to the equation and my home life became a bit more demanding, and as I was growing my business and the business became a bit more demanding, it was very obvious the conflict. And as I took that to the Lord, I talked to you guys about, his instructions to me about slowing down and changing the way that I've done business and all of that. Like the Lord has parented me through this season very well. And I've shared with you guys a lot of the things he's taught me when we did the episode on God math, and I shared the replay of that webinar. So the Lord has really given me strategy and insight on how to navigate this season. But one of the things that I had to face before surrendering this to the Lord is like, hey, these goals that I had that I was pushing to get done in 1, 3, 5 years, I need to take the timeline off of that, because the work that's going to have to go into it for me to meet those deadlines, something is going to suffer. And I am not willing for my family to be one of those things. I am not willing for my children to be one of those things. I am definitely not willing for my marriage to be one of those things. I will close every business down before I lose my husband and my children trying to be this boss chick. I ain't, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But something that I feel like I had to face was, hey, you're going to have to be okay with this taking a little longer. I know that it's this desire for you to have this $1 million business, but you might be okay with a few six figures for now. Now, if the Lord wants to do something else and speed something up and do his thing, that's wonderful. But as far as what I'm putting my strength to, it can't be that. And the riot, I'm using in quotation, of that type of decision or choosing to disrupt that grind culture in entrepreneurship, that could look like your own internal stuff, the enemy just really bringing your type A overachiever on just to the forefront, and homegirl is on 10, just hating this decision that you're making, and it's causing a lot of internal turmoil. Your riot may show up and friends and family like, what? You're going to just focus on your children? What about you? What about how are you going to just let your husband provide and you don't have your own stuff on the side? What if he leaves you? I mean, I grew up around independent women. So a lot of the rioting came in the form of opinions with a lot of the decisions that I've had to make in order to be in alignment with the Lord. And so we're going to experience that. And we're going to have chaos that comes up as a result of us disrupting what may be normal. Another idol in the business world that we are called to disrupt as kingdom entrepreneurs is manipulative marketing that is only focused on sales and not souls. Many online businesses, we see it all the time, using high pressure sales tactics, psychological manipulation, these scarcity driven used car salesman type of practices to exploit people's emotions, to exploit their insecurity, to make them buy something. All types of manipulation going on just to feed consumerism. But the Lord calls for honesty. He calls for integrity. He calls for loving your neighbor as yourself. So us building these ethical businesses where we are serving people as opposed to just trying to sell to them, where we're respecting them as individuals and prioritizing their needs rather than just prioritizing us making a quick buck, us coming and approaching marketing this way, it is different. And this may not cause an external riot because ain't nobody going to fight you on the fact that you're serving folks because they trying to get their money. They not worried about you. They may look at that as something, as an advantage to them. But that riot, in quotes, may show up as a sacrifice in your business financially by you not playing by the world's games. And you're going to have to be okay with that. I remember I had a client, we were coming up on the time to renew their contract. So we did like their podcast and we did like some social media stuff for them. And all of my contracts are a year. So we're coming up on a year and we were having our meetings and we were going over our findings and, what we were able to do, our metrics and all of that. Over the course of my working relationship with this client, I had come to realize that the specific problem that they had, that they hired me for, they actually needed something else. Because I could just tell by conversations, I could tell by feedback, I could tell by their responses to the genuine good results that we were providing, that there was something else, that it was just some type of disconnect. So when we were having this call and going over just a recap of what we were able to do, and I was talking to them, what I realized is that what they needed was different than what they hired us for. And they were never going to get that met because that's not what they hired us for, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like, well, the situation was they hired us for their podcast to develop and manage a podcast, as well as to do some social media work for them. Their bigger problem was that they were doing a lot of various marketing efforts. So marketing is so broad, right? I mean, you got traditional, then you got online, and then under those individual umbrellas are so many different approaches. And so they were essentially like throwing things at the wall and seeing what stuck. And so the podcast and what we were doing with social media was one of those things that they were throwing at the wall to see what stuck. And they had other things going on too, but it was like nothing was fully like working together as it should. Like marketing, it starts with the sales and the business objectives of the organization. And the goal of the marketing strategy is to drive the financial goals of the business. And it is to use whatever forms of marketing necessary to drive those goals. So what they had was a bunch of tactics with no anchored strategy. And we were one of those tactics along with other people, that vendors that they hired out for other forms of marketing. So they have folks on the podcast and social media. They have other people on website. They have other people on radio ads. And we were doing like some audio ads as well. So they had so many different things moving, but there was no anchored strategy that was fueling all of these decisions. And so I ended up realizing that in our conversation, in our working relationship. And I told them, I said, hey, I don't think that you should renew this contract. Now, this is like a 5-figure contract for me. So this is a good piece of business that it will be in my business's best interest to renew this contract by any means necessary. But that's not how I operate. I operate on kingdom principles. And so I told them, I said, hey, I don't think we should discuss renewing this contract. Based on our conversation, this is what I think that you really need. And I explained to them in more detail what I just explained to you. And I said, so here's my suggestion. And I gave them some suggestions on how I think that they could fill that gap and then see better return on investment from all of their marketing tactics. And so they really appreciated the fact that I was honest about that. They really appreciated the fact that I was willing to, and she said it like, the fact that you're willing to lose business speaks volumes. And I told her, when I work with people, first of all, I have an obligation to the Lord and I love what I do. I don't have to work. Okay. My husband takes care of me. And so I do this because I genuinely want to serve those that God has called me to. And so if I'm feeling like that there's a disconnect or something missing, I am willing to just take the L for the sake of integrity and for the sake of making sure that I'm in alignment with the way that the Lord wants me to run his business. And so I say this to say that your riot may be a financial loss. Your riot may be things taking a little bit longer, but you have to be willing to face whatever comes.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp's 2026 State of Stigma report surveyed 2,000 Americans and revealed that 85% of Americans believe that getting support is wise, yet 74% say that society discourages them from doing so. There is a gap between believing in mental health support and actually seeking it. And what we can do to close that gap is to just make that first step. And BetterHelp makes that very easy. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 6 million people globally. And it works with an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session based on over 1.7 million client reviews. BetterHelp therapists work according to a strict code of conduct and are fully licensed in the U.S. BetterHelp does the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your therapy goals. A short questionnaire helps identify your needs and preferences, and their 12 plus years of experience in industry-leading match fulfillment rate means that they typically get it right on the first time. If you aren't happy with your match, just switch to a different therapist at any time from their tailored recommendations. Don't let stigma stand in the way of support. Start therapy with BetterHelp. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com. That's betterhelp.com.
And there are so many idols that I can go over, but I think it's less about that and more so about being willing to face the riots, whatever that may look like. Because Paul was ready to pull up. He was ready to confront them. But God had already provided protection in a way for this to get dealt with without Paul having to deal with it or be impacted by it. He had favor with the mayor and the people in there who were like, hey, no, you stay out here because we don't need you going in there. And then it gets even more violent because here you are. They had the mayor who went in there and calmed everybody down and gave them an alternative way to deal with their issues. And then everything was resolved and everybody dispersed without any violence or without Paul facing any type of repercussions at that time. And so there's so much hope and encouragement that even when we feel like we're taking some type of loss, even when there's so much chaos or rioting or persecution and things that are happening, even when that feels overwhelming and it feels dangerous, it's so much hope in knowing that there's safety in the Lord. There's favor in the Lord. There's provision in the Lord. And we can rest in that truth. And we could put our hope and our faith and our confidence in Him as kingdom entrepreneurs. So there's encouragement for us as disruptors. Yeah, we're going to have some riots. They're going to look different for many of us, but we're not doing this alone. And the Lord has already set up whatever provision that we need. So now that we understand that riots are a part of this, that we're going to be disrupting some things, we're going to be addressing some idols, that we're going about doing the business the Lord's way in this capitalistic, consumer-driven environment that just cares about money and self, we're going to make some folks mad. So what does that mean for us as entrepreneurs? How do we build businesses that are pure, that are resilient, that are able to withstand various challenges like Paul's ministry did? I have about 6 or 7 things here that are practical tips that I want you to think about and consider as you're strategizing for your business on how to disrupt well. And when I say disrupt well, what I mean by that is with us disrupting the norm of culture, yes, there is heightened risk of and a high likelihood of these various riots and obstacles that we are going to face, the persecution and all of that we've discussed. But I also think that there's a lot of opportunity here that can work in our favor as kingdom entrepreneurs. So for example, we talked about how the world's way when it comes to marketing can be pushy. It can be manipulating people just to get their money. It can be very profit focused and not people focused. And how us as kingdom entrepreneurs, we're focusing on serving people. We're focusing on pouring into them, not just on making them spend their money, but we are interested in them and pouring into them as individuals. I believe that that is an approach that can potentially go over very well with potential customers. So yeah, we may lose some opportunities. Yeah, we may put income at risk in some ways, but there are other ways to where I feel like that can benefit us and benefit the bottom line of our businesses without compromising. I've had people who have come into my studio and I've given a tour and they're telling me about their event or things that they have going on. And I should be focusing on selling them into booking the space for something. But sometimes I'll tell them, hey, I don't think that this is the best fit based upon what you think your needs are. And while that may have been a loss of that business, that's turned into referrals. That's turned into new opportunities. And has also turned into a reputation that has served us well in the long haul for our business, where people trust us to be people who care about them, people who go the extra mile, people who think about the details and really put the customer first. So again, yeah, we're disrupting, but when you disrupt well, you're able to do so in a way to where your business doesn't fully suffer, where you can stay in alignment with the Lord and not compromise, but still see impact and income. Now, there's sometimes where you just gonna have to take the L because that's, how the cookie gonna crumble with you being obedient, but that doesn't have to be the case all the time. And so that's what we're talking about here. So the first way that you can dwell well is to have transparent pricing and practices. If you are a product-based business, be honest about what materials, what ingredients go into the products that you're selling to your consumer. If you have a clothing brand, talk about how you source your fabrics and the meaning behind it and how that will impact the comfortability of the customer. If you sell wellness products, so like I buy vitamins pretty frequently, and I look for companies who are transparent about their ingredients. I want to know what's in this vitamin. I want to know where it came from. And I'm more likely to buy from companies who do that, companies who have like a purity award or something that signifies that there's a standard in their ingredients and materials that they use. So be transparent about that with your customers. That's not something that we see too often. I think we see it more in like the supplement industry or food and beverage and stuff like that, because a lot of consumers are more health conscious. I'm one of those health conscious consumers. I buy organic. I don't buy anything with dyes or anything for my kids. Like I'm real big on ingredients for my own body as well as my family. So I think we see it more often in that sense. But how often do we see it in other type of businesses? Like, how can you be transparent about what all goes into even the service that you're offering your customer? I know for me, I'm always thinking of ways that I can add value to my clients. So I had a coaching program last year that I did for entrepreneurs. It's called the Executive or Entrepreneur to Executive Training Program. And I really wanted to help people to build the foundations of a good business, because I felt like so many entrepreneurs will just hop into doing whatever they're good at. So whether you're a graphic designer, a photographer, you create clothes, like whatever the case may be, you hop into your area of expertise and neglect some of the foundational elements that make a successful business and that sustain a successful business. And so I have a master's in business. I've been an entrepreneur for quite some time. And yeah, I had a lot of value that I could bring on my own, but how can I make this even better? So I enlisted my husband, who is a CPA, and I had him donate classes so that people from a professional standpoint can learn about business taxes, can learn about financial operations, can learn how to read their profit and loss statement, can learn how to create a budget for their business, to where all of those financial things are being taught, not just from me, but now a specialist who is an expert at that. I even enlisted the help of my lawyer to talk about intellectual property, securing your business. I've had the benefit of being able to see how law plays a great role in creating income opportunities for businesses beyond their products and services. I've had people reach out to me to license my intellectual property, and that's something that I would be able to have passive income. It's a revenue stream that I will be able to have that came about simply by making sure that I took care of the legal aspects of my business. And so I wanted those that I worked with to be able to get that knowledge as well. And so I enlisted the help of my lawyer. Sure, I could talk about my experiences with it, but I'm not a lawyer. So I brought in mine to be able to contribute to that. So that was a way that I was thinking about how to better serve those that I wanted to work with, how to be more thorough about it. And I was transparent about the experts, their background, and those who will be pouring into them. And so that wasn't a product as far as like something I was shipping and mailing out, but I was able to be transparent, and that worked very well in my favor. It was a very successful program. So for you, as you're planning out your business, think, how can I be transparent in both my pricing as well as my practices? Make sure that you have policies and things that are in your businesses that are rooted in integrity. That will help set you apart from the shiesty tactics that we see in this industry. So if you have policies that prioritize integrity, so let's say like some type of return policy, or if you have some type of honest advertising policy, some type of, let's say, price matching policy. I've seen this in product-based businesses before, where they'll say, if you find this cheaper somewhere else, I'll match that price. So that's a commitment to the integrity of the business, and also a commitment to serving well the audience by not having them overpay. So that's something to think about. And that's something I believe will be very beneficial to your marketing strategy. No, it's not content and post, all of what we have reduced marketing to in this digital age, but this is going to create brand loyalty. This is going to create trust with your consumer. This is going to benefit your business in the long haul. So that's the first way to disrupt well, is to have transparent pricing and practices. The second thing I want you to write down is prioritize purpose over profit. The business world loves money. The focus is on money, money, money. But how can you prioritize the Lord's purpose over the bottom line? And you may say, well, Tatum, my business is all about purpose. This is a kingdom business. This is why the Lord is calling me to do blah, blah, blah. I get it. I hear you, but we can still do more, is what I'm saying. And by doing more, I believe this will also go over well with your potential customer, and it'll go over well with building the brand. And so one of the ways that you can prioritize purpose over profit is by having some type of giving arm to your business. So figure out, how can I include charitable causes to my business? How can I have a social impact arm of my business? And I've thought about this even recently with the society. The society used to be a membership community that was just an extension of the podcast. It's a paid membership community, and it was just a part of the business. But this year, we actually formed the Anchored Media Foundation, and now the society is a program under it, because I wanted to have a nonprofit arm to my empire so that I can focus on giving. And the society is a way to where we can just focus on serving our community. We were doing so many things like raising money to give back for the holidays. Y'all have heard me talk about that on the podcast before, raising money to be able to serve people for the holidays who may not have the resources to do things that they want to do for their families. We've come together and served each other, people having babies, and we have purchased off registries. We've done so many different things within our community, but I felt like we could do more. We can do better at really honoring this community that the Lord has blessed us with and honoring these women. And we made this adjustment to being a nonprofit so that we could be able to do that. And I believe our members appreciate that and appreciate the intent behind it. So what does that look like for you? You may not need to form a whole nonprofit, but how can you support various, let's say, kingdom projects or church initiatives or do community service? How can you use the money that you're making in your business to be a blessing to other people? Think about that as you plan for your new year, and more importantly, implement that when it's time to. Also, as you're planning out your products and your services for your business, think about, how can I go above and beyond? Yeah, I may be a lawyer. Yeah, I may be a real estate agent. Yeah, I may sell clothes. Yeah, I may insert whatever your business is here, but how can I still meet people's needs, solve their problems, give them exactly what they're purchasing and signing up for? How can I do that and also go above and beyond? At Anchor Media Studios, we have so many things that we do extra for people who book our space. There's steamers in there just in case you're changing clothes and it's a little wrinkle. You can knock that out. We have microphones and things so people aren't lugging equipment. We have lighting, just so many things that are added conveniences for those who utilize our space. Even when people book this space, normally a lot of places you go to have like keyless entry. You get a little code, you go in. It's very impersonal. But I usually, when people book with us for the first time, I usually like to show up and meet them and give them a quick tour, make sure they have everything that they need, give them my cell phone number so they can reach out to me if need be throughout the course of their booking. If people need an extra 10, 15 minutes, I give them some grace without being quick to charge them for every single second. So those are just some little ways for me in my business practices that I try to go above and beyond. And it's different. Folks may look down upon it, but it's something that allows me to connect with my audience better. It's the way that I show the love of the Lord. And I've seen it positively impact my business. We have a new tenant at the studio who came to tour. I called them ahead of them coming to confirm, to introduce myself, to learn a bit more about what they had going on so that when I did the tour, I was able to customize it to their specific needs. And at the end of the tour, They signed up for a lease. So now they're a tenant within our space. But as we were talking, they were appreciative of the customer service because they were talking about how another space that they looked at, the customer service wasn't good. The detail into the space and the environment that was cultivated wasn't there. So this was like a co-working space that they toured, and they were saying how, like, I mean, you got a therapist in this office, somebody doing weaves in the next office, somebody doing nails over here. They were like, it's just not a professional environment. And it was just too much. And so then the customer service was a lot. They were very pushy, very salesy. She was on an email thread of two different sales associates, both trying to bully her into signing a contract. She said they were calling her late at night, sending messages. She said that she was totally turned off by their approach. And she has such a different experience with us that they signed on, and now they are tenants within our space, which is great for us financially because that's monthly recurring revenue. Y'all know how we love predictable income around here. Okay. We build businesses that need to be predictable, not we shooting in the dark, everybody. So, that's great for our business. And so that was an opportunity where I was able to see in real time what disrupting well looks like and how that can positively impact the business without compromising. So for you, think about, how can I go above and beyond? Maybe my shipping policy is I ship out in 3 days, but I push myself to get it done in 1 so that they're surprised because they got it earlier. Maybe I write a handwritten thank you note with my product that I'm shipping out just as an extra touch. Whatever the case may be, brainstorm, think about it, but incorporate it because it is going to benefit your business and is also going to positively impact your customer. Number 3, stay rooted in prayer and community. A big part of your business strategy for the new year and for today and tomorrow is to stay rooted in prayer and community. When you face different type of riots or resistance, sometimes it is the way that Paul faced it, where these people were in an uproar in this amphitheater. For us in today's age, it may be online. It may be somebody doing a YouTube video, leaving a bad review, doing some type of exposed, whatever. We see so many of that these days. So you can expect persecution. Maybe somebody made a TikTok series on you and they lying through their teeth, or they're misrepresenting the facts the way that Demetrius was in the text, just saying a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't true about Paul's ministry. We're going to face things like that as Christians, but we have to stay rooted in prayer and community, because I believe that when we do that, the Lord is going to allow us to see things before they happen. He's not going to let us be blindsided. Some things will catch us off guard. But in my experience, by me having a prayer life, by me having a community who I'm praying for, and they're also praying for me, that has allowed me to be proactive instead of reactive about a lot of things. Being in prayer and community will allow you to have the support that you need to withstand those seasons where you are enduring. I remember I went through a very hurtful process a couple of years ago that took about 3 or 4 years to resolve. And it frustrated me so much, where I was being lied on. I was being persecuted. This riot was one that is like etched into my brain of a core part of my entrepreneurial journey. And in that, it's my community that kept me on the straight and narrow. So many times, like I speak on this show every week, and the Lord told me, do not say anything. And I had to stay true to that. And my community had to hold me accountable to that. And through prayer, the Lord was able to just continue to strengthen me for the years that it took for this situation to resolve. But without it, child, who knows? I might have been clapping back. That's actually not in my character. I am team, I will act like you don't exist. Like my flesh, if I'm offended or if somebody comes for me, I am not inclined to respond. I'm inclined to ignore. And sometimes that's not good either. It can benefit in the fact that I'm not, clapping back or popping off at the mouth, but it doesn't work in my benefit when I'm supposed to pray for my enemies. That it isn't good when I'm supposed to be taking things to the Lord. But by you being grounded and rooted in prayer and community, it allows you to respond well to the riots. What if Paul would have been like, no, I'm not staying out there. Let me go in there because now they lying on me. He in there telling them people that I'm doing this, that, and the other. All I'm doing is spreading the gospel. No, let me at him. Let me at him. Like, imagine if Paul was like that when God had already worked out that the mayor was going to come diffuse the situation and it wasn't going to be a thing anymore. Imagine it instead of him being rooted and anchored in doing things the Lord's way, he would have operated out of his flesh. Because I'm sure he was irritated, but he didn't. And so for us, being rooted in prayer and community, it keeps us grounded. It keeps our flesh at bay, and it keeps us in that secret place, which is where we build these businesses from. So as you're planning your year out, figure out, how am I going to work in prayer and community? Who are my people that I can trust? Maybe we need to have a prayer call once a week. Maybe we need to have a prayer call every day. Maybe we need to have check-in points where we get together once a month in addition to our prayer call. Maybe we need to have some rules where it's like, hey, if I text riot, that means that it's something going on and I need you to call me and hold me accountable. Whatever it may be for you, whatever works based upon your community. Maybe it's you need to get involved in your local church and join a small group, join a ministry, something where you're building up the kingdom people that you have in your community and your friendship circle. Think about that, ponder on that, and whatever it may look like for you, implement it. And I'm actually only going to do one more because a lot of the other ones I've touched on in my explanations. And so the last thing that I want you to write down is think about, how can I make sure that the legacy I'm leaving is a legacy of the Lord and not myself? Paul's legacy is Christ. What he did in the city of Ephesus was made a mark for Christianity. And so with our businesses, yeah, we're going to do all of these great things, but we need to be intentional because people have a tendency, and it's this culture of idolizing individuals, of celebrity culture, of influencer culture. It's all about personal branding, self, me, I. And so you're going to build a personal brand by way of you doing what God has called you to do. You're going to be known by way of you being the vessel, but you need to be very intentional about stewarding that influence and stewarding that impact to where the main thing is the main thing, which is Jesus Christ. So how can you build your business, whatever your business may be, in a way to where he is glorified? Now, in some businesses, it may look different than others. So in my business, I have a faith-based business. So I'm a lot more open and honest about my faith. I talk about the Lord. I talk about scripture. That is the culture of my business. You may be in an industry that isn't like that, right? So you may be in an industry is more, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're in real estate, maybe you're in law, maybe the culture or the boundaries of your industry doesn't allow you to be as vocal about your beliefs as others. That doesn't mean that you can't leave a legacy of the glory of God. You show the love of God in how you treat people. You show the love of God in how you go above and beyond. You show the love of God by you being Christ-like. That's also leaving a legacy for the Lord, you being Christ-like. And then also you live in a lifestyle of obedience to him, because all the specifics about the other ways that you can show your faith and glorify him through your work, he'll tell you. So these aren't things that we have to figure out on our own, but we have to focus on it and make it a priority so that we can make sure that we are implementing it. So I'm going to end this episode here. I pray that this blessed you. I pray that you learned something new, because this is somewhere in the text that I personally hadn't read before I came across it for this episode. And I hope that you got some good practical nuggets that you can use so that you're able to go about your business with the understanding that there are going to be riots, but you can disrupt well. You can understand that, hey, I'm going to ruffle some feathers, but I can do that in a way to where I'm not compromising and I'm still seeing elevation in my business. And again, remember, sometimes though, we just going to have to suffer for the Lord, right? So don't think that this is foolproof, because this simply may not apply in some seasons. But I still wanted to give some practical things for in the seasons where you are able to apply it, you're able to see the fruit from it. And if you are in a season where the riot is causing you to just have to endure, then you just got to sit under it. And you could listen to the episode we did on that to get encouragement there. But again, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Blessed and Bossed Up podcast. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.